What's up team, and welcome to this week's video. It's an exciting one. I've just taken delivery of this. Forget Garmin, forget Whoop, forget Oura Ring. This is arguably the most accurate way to measure your rest, recovery, sleep and training. Firstbeat technology is utilised by loads of different sports teams around the globe. Lots of teams in the Premier League, in the NFL, in the NBA. It's been scientifically tested in 80 lab research projects and has had 150 peer-reviewed papers written about it, the accuracy of it and how it measures its data. Short of going into a lab and getting everything scientifically measured, this is the cream of the crop when it comes to measuring your recovery, your rest, and your training. And in today's video, we're going to go through how it works. I'm going to use it for a good couple of days and we'll have a look at my results. This video isn't sponsored. Luckily, the work I do, we get to work with Firstbeat, and I'm actually a Firstbeat coach as well. So this is just going to be interesting as a bit of a case study on myself. Just wanted to see what my rest, recovery and training is like, and I thought I'd make a video for you guys as well. So obviously there's lots of devices on the market right now. Obviously there's Garmin, we've got Fitbit, you've got things like the Whoop band, which is really popular now, and things like the Oura Ring as well, which all kind of track your heart rate variability, all that exciting stuff while you're sleeping, while you're recovering, while you're training, and kind of put all that data together and give you some insights on it. But where Firstbeat has the upper hand over those devices is it actually detects the electrical signals that go through or to your heart, as opposed to just measuring heart rate on your wrist. So it's so much more accurate because it's actually detecting those electrical signals as opposed to what potentially could be not, as accurate data looking at the blood running through your wrist from those devices. And if you use Garmin, for example, if you've got a watch or you use a Garmin head unit on your bike, a lot of the technology within Garmin, so if the Garmin has ever told you your VO2 max or your training effect score or how long you need to recover or any of that stuff, that technology is actually provided by Firstbeat. And if you have a look at the back of the box, when you first got your Garmin, you can see it here on the Garmin website. The technology provided and all the data crunching side of things is actually all provided by Firstbeat. So Firstbeat technology is actually in Garmin as well. But here we're cutting straight to the source and actually measuring the electronic signals sent to our heart to look at our heart rate variability and our rest, recovery, training, all that good stuff. So what is this device actually measuring? We're measuring heart rate variability. So yes, these devices measure your heart rate as well, but there's also something called heart rate variability, which is measuring the difference between subsequent heartbeats. So the higher your heart rate variability, the more relaxed you are. You're in a kind of rest and digest state. You're relaxing, you're recovering, and all that good stuff. If your heart rate isn't varied and the beats are quite consecutive one after the other, you're in a more of a stressed state. So a fight or flight response, if you like. So with the accurate heart rate variability data, we can kind of see, is the exercise we're doing going to be enough to improve our physical health and our fitness? Is the sleep we're getting actually helping us recover? And our activities we're doing during the day, like reading or watching TV, for example, actually putting us in a restful state? I know previously when I've done these tests before, I could even see that TV stresses me out, whereas reading actually helps me relax. So once I've attached the device, which we'll go through later on in the video, I'll connect it to the Firstbeat app. I can then see real time what sort of state my body is in. I'll also be then filling out a journal on the app, so at the end of the 3-day measurement, I can actually see specifically what activities during my day helped me relax and recover. Did I drink alcohol one night, for example, before I went to sleep, and therefore was my recovery impacted? Is the training I'm doing actually improving my fitness levels? Is caffeine, for example, stopping me sleep well? So enough talking, I'll stick it on, complete the 3-day measurement and go through my results. Right, good morning. So time to attach the device. Did actually test positive for coronavirus this morning, so who knows what will happen with the test. My heart rate might be a little bit higher for the next couple of days, but we will go with it anyway and see what happens. So all I'm going to do is just attach the electrodes, peel one off at a time, stick one just below my collarbone, below my rib cage, flashing green, and then we just need to connect the app. So I've already put my height, weight, age, all that good stuff into the app, so it should already know all that. Paired it with the app, it's all updated, I've reattached it. Now just need to click start measurement and we should get going. Awesome, so now all I've got to do over the next 3 days is just enter stuff into my journal, just so that I can see, when I'm recovering, when I'm exercising, all that stuff in relation to what's actually happening with my heart rate variability. And then I'll catch up with you in about 3 days when everything's done and we'll see what my results say. Oh, well there we have it. A quick 3 days for you, but a pretty long, boring 3 days for me. Obviously, as I said at the start, I was testing positive for COVID. Obviously the Omicron variant for the past 3 days, so I haven't been out, but I felt completely fine in myself. Haven't done any training obviously outside, but I've been on the indoor trainer a couple of times and then hit the gym as well, as you'll have seen in the past couple of clips. And even before we get into the data, I could see over the past 3 days kind of a live feed of what was happening, whether I was in a more restful state or more stressed state. Here you can see on the graph, this is kind of what I was looking at over the past couple of days. So even though the Firstbeat Lifestyle Assessment analyzes all your data kind of at the end of the 3 days and puts it all together, you could actually see throughout the assessment what was kind of going on a day-to-day basis. So pretty interesting, but the real exciting, sexy stuff is now on my phone, all analysed, all ready to look at. So already on the results screen here, you can see I scored 95 out of 100, which, you know, seems pretty good straight from the off, and it says excellent underneath. So things are looking good already. So we can see across the top here, my 3-day measurement is split into 4 different sections. We've got the summary, we've got stress, sleep, and exercise. So let's split it up into 3, but let's cover the summary first. So the summary is obviously the total of the whole 3 days, what was kind of going on in terms of stress, sleep, and recovery, and gives me a total score. And we can already see here 95 out of 100. So thankfully did pretty well. 85 to 100 gives me that score. And we can see overall over the 3 days, I was 97 out of 100 for stress, 100 out of 100 for sleep. So I was obviously sleeping pretty well. And then my exercise was 87 out of 100. Now we'll get onto that a little bit later, but obviously I had COVID, so there were no walks or anything outside going on. Now, as we scroll down into the summary, the next thing we come across is the body resources. This is essentially your body battery. And before we move any further, when we're looking at these graphs, green is recovery, as I said before, red is kind of a more stressed response, but don't think red is stress and that's bad. You know, we kind of are in this little bit of a stress state throughout the majority of our days. It helps us get things done, it helps us be productive, and gets things kind of, you know, we're psychologically stimulated and physiologically stimulated. And then finally, blue is exercise, and light blue is kind of light exercise, and any periods of white are kind of anything in between. So we can see here at the start of the first measurement, we've got my sort of starting level, I guess, that dips sort of on and off throughout the day, depending on if I was recovered or stressed. And then overnight, we have this big kind of elevation as I recovered and replenished my body battery stores. Then on day 2, you can see again, it dips kind of throughout the day, a little bit of recovery in the evening, a little bit of an upward trend. And then again, into the nighttime, we go skyrocket up through to the top. And then finally, day 3, you can see here, body battery dipped quite a lot at the start. We'll see why in a minute, obviously my exercise there, and then drops again throughout the day, a little bit of recovery, and then goes flying back up. So I actually ended the assessment in a sort of higher position than I started it. So across the whole of the 3 days, did quite well, recovered more than I kind of reduced my body battery, if you like. And then you can see here the Firstbeat Life score comparison. The average person my age and gender kind of scores at 63 overall. I scored, obviously, as we can see at the top, 95. So did pretty well, pretty pleased with myself. I'm in the best 5% of my peers, which is pretty interesting. And we can also have a look at the other measurement information here. You can see my age, gender, my resting heart rate was measured at being 47, so that will have been in the middle of the night. And then you've also got your sort of heart rates for lowest, average, and highest heart rate for the 3 days underneath here. So you can see again, my lowest heart rate was 47 on day 2, and my highest heart rate was, highest heart rate was 187 on the Saturday, which was the crit race. So it'll have predicted my heart rate, my max heart rate, as being 191. Okay, now let's move across to the stress tab and see what's going on there. So we can see, obviously scored at the top, 97 out of 100, as it said on the summary slide. That's the kind of average for all 3 days. And my daily average amount of stress was in normal, so 41%, we can see here. 41%, and then amount of recovery, so that's across the day and night, that was 48%, which is in the good category. And then we can see it split across the 3 days here, and get a bit more in-depth information. So 97 out of 100 on day 1, then on day 2 we were 96 out of 100, and then on day 3, 99 out of 100. So the bands like Whoop, etc. and Garmin, even though they're not as accurate as this because they're measuring again your sort of pulse through your wrist as opposed to the electrical signals, will kind of give you this data. But where Firstbeat is really interesting is we can actually open the graph and have a look on each day where things were happening across the course of the day. So you can see here, I won't go into each day, but on day number 1, we can see actually where I was kind of stressed at work, where periods of recovery were, where, you know, I was sleeping. Did I recover straight from the start of my sleep, or did it take me a little while to get into, you know, deep REM recovery sleep? And you can kind of see here, you know, TV in the evening maybe actually didn't relax me, and I was actually slightly stressed, or not stressed, but I was psychologically or physiologically active, I suppose, within that period here. And you can see on this day, actually, I did a gym session. We'll go into exercise a little bit later, but you can see here that there are just some periods of light blue, and that was a gym session, obviously not a cardio session, so those not going to pick it up too much. You can see here my most stressed state, that's where I was doing a workshop for a client. And then the software just gives you kind of stress and recovery highlights for each day, which is really interesting. And then again, it's going to be exactly the same for day 2 and for day 3. Now moving on to sleep, so a really interesting one, 100 out of 100 overall, which again is pretty good. I think on day 1, because I didn't necessarily sleep from day 1 to day 2, I started the measurement on day 1, if that makes sense, I got 0, but then day 2, 100 out of 100, and then 100 out of 100 on day number 3 as well, so pretty good overall. I did have a drink on day 2 as well, but because I only had 2 units, it didn't really pick it up on the assessment. But I'll chuck some data on screen here where you can actually see that this is one I think I did a little while ago, the impact of a couple of units, a decent couple of units, had on your sleep and recovery. So you can see it takes you a little bit longer to get into that sort of more recovery sleep, as opposed to if you didn't have any alcohol at all. So that's not to say, you know, don't have any alcohol, but just if you're training hard or you're having alcohol, you know, a couple of nights a week and quite a lot of it, then it can affect your recovery and how well you're sleeping, and therefore how well you can perform the next day. And then finally, let's move on to exercise. So actually, in terms of exercise, I did on day number 1, I did a gym session in the evening. On day number 2, I just did a nice hour zone 2 steady cycle on the indoor trainer. And then on day 3, I did an hour's workout, but within that hour, I did sort of some zone 2 at the start and at the end, so nice and relaxed. But in the middle, I actually did a Zwift crit race, which was a 20-minute crit race. And you can actually see on the screen here, that picked up a new FDP of 322 watts. So I was pushing as hard as I possibly could during that crit race. I think I came like 18th out of 66. So not a bad result in Cat B on Zwift. But yeah, you can see I was really pushing hard. So that's the exercise I did across the course of the 3 days. So we can see here, 87 out of 100 overall. So my daily average was 37 minutes of activity. My average calorie expenditure was 3,163. That's not just from exercise, that's total across the course of the day, averaged over the 3 days. And my total, or my average walking and running steps was 80. Obviously, I was probably just walking around the house, so I didn't get many steps on average. And of course, this is actually just tracking your sort of torso, so it doesn't count any arm swinging, etc. So today, I haven't done anything so far yet. Today it's the morning, but I've done 625 steps, whereas it measures at 80. I got on average, but again, that's your torso moving up and down, so some decent paced walking. And then looking at each day, day number 1 was 20. So didn't do too much exercise on day 1, or not that counted anyway, because I did a weight session, as you saw in the clips, so not going to be getting my heart rate up too much. And of course, I couldn't go out for a walk to get my heart rate up, so that's why day 1 scored quite low and was therefore a little bit lower in terms of the calories as well. Then on day number 2 was the Friday, so this was excellent. So did 55 minutes of activity, 3,315 calories burned, one piece of exercise that was improving my performance. So my aerobic training effect was 2.6 out of 5. So the higher the number, if you've got a Garmin, for example, this will pop up on your Garmin. But the higher the number, the more it's improving your fitness. The lower the number, the less it's improving your fitness. So a nice mid-range there. It was a nice slow endurance ride for an hour. And then finally we moved down to day number 3. And this is where I did the crit that improved my FTP, so pretty hard session. And you can see 4.8 out of 5 for the aerobic training effect score, and then 1.1 out of 5 for the anaerobic. So there you have it, my Firstbeat lifestyle assessment results. As you can see, it's so much more accurate and detailed than things like Garmin, Whoop or Oura Ring, and I absolutely love my Garmin, and it provides me with everything I would need on a daily basis. But doing things like that every so often, you can just kind of see exactly what behaviours am I doing in the day that's affecting my recovery, my training, my sleep, and all those little things. Hopefully you enjoyed seeing the data. Maybe you weren't interested in my data specifically, but it's just good to see what the kind of, or one of the most accurate activity trackers measures and kind of how those results look, and then what things you can start to change because of it. If this is something you are looking to do, it's not just something you can obviously go and buy from the shop or something you can just order online. But if you go on the Firstbeat website, you can find their providers. I'll put the link down in the comments section below. If it is something you're interested in trying, you can see the providers in your country and then just get in contact with one of them. But thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you found this video interesting. It's always interesting to see what new tech is out there, and this is probably something you haven't heard of either. Have a good rest of your day, and I will see you guys in next week's video. Have a good one.